The title of the article we have chosen is named Measuring Narrative Engagement, The Heart Tells the Story by Daniel Richardson. So first we'll introduce the article, then we'll look at the research methodology, then we'll see the findings, and finally we'll do a conclusion. So this article is in experimental psychology. More precisely, it relates to how stories play a fundamental role in human culture, and it measures the extent to which the delivery medium, audio or visual, of a story affects conscious and subconscious engagement with the narrative. Indeed, we always listen to stories in our everyday life as they contribute to the sharing of a cultural identity, they help gain knowledge, reinforce social bonds between people, and provide entertainment in all societies. Indeed, we as listeners usually identify ourselves to the people and imagine actions and places. However, information can be transmitted through different mediums, such as written books, videos, and auditory narratives. In other terms, the article answers the following question: is it more listening to a video or watching it that makes an individual more involved into it and aroused? Is there a difference if we use a different delivery channel when it comes to engagement with the narrative?
So basically, for the research methods, there was like 109 people involved. They were approximately 29 years old. So we will be describing the experiments a bit further later. So basically, there were four genres of literature work that were used to assess emotional engagements, and then there was an evaluation of the engagements on 4 scales. Then there was four indicator used, so the heart rates, the electrodermal activity, the body temperatures, and the accelerometers. So, as said before, there was 4 genres. There was classic, action, crime fiction, science fiction, and fantasy. There was in total 8 works of fiction, so there were, for example, Pride and Prejudice, The Girl on the Train, Game of Thrones. As mentioned before, there was a narrative engagement scale that was developed by Bristol and Bilzendick in 2009. So it measured via 4 axes with 3 questions in each axis. So first there was the emotional engagement, then the narrative understanding, then the attentional focus, then the narrative presence. And so there was each time a 3 question for each of these axes. The research procedure then, there was 2 phases, so like beforehand. The participants were placed in an electric wristband around the wrist. Then they had to fill a demographic survey, very simple, and finally a survey about their media consumption, like the way they use, they watch TV shows, reality shows, and stuff like that. Then in the experiment, as mentioned previously, there was a measure of the heart rate, the electrodermal activity, the body temperatures, and the accelerometers. The experiment steps. So basically, there was first the reading of the synopsis, then by the participants. Then they had to watch or listen to the story with a black screen. Then they had to report their experience, the experience they had with the story that just had been placed in front of. And finally, they had to rate the 12 questions, rate the 12 statements, which had a 7 points Likert scale from strongly disagree to strongly agree. In the end, what might have been the most challenging step was the data processing. First, the physiological data were aligned to stimulus and contingent from information, so it's about timing to see at which time something happens. Then they had to be trimmed to trial durations using the universal time coordinates that were recorded by the emphatical sensors and the Gorilla system. They had to clean the EDA data using the EDA Explorer algorithm to make sure that every data was clean enough. And finally, there was a normalization of data, which reduced the number of usable data to around from 60 to 70 participants.
Participants reported that the videos were more engaging than the audiobooks, by about 15% on average. Conversely, participants' physiological measures showed higher engagement for audiobooks rather than video. So in terms of raw measures, their average heart rate was higher when they were listening to audiobooks by about 2 beats a minute, as we can see on the graph. They had a greater range of hertz by about 4 beats per minute. They were roughly 2 degrees warmer in their body temperatures, and their skin conductance, which is EDA, was higher by 0.02 microsieverts as well. Surprisingly, there is a strong evidence that participants rated the engagement higher for videos rather than audiobooks, even though they were considering audiobooks with a higher significance for people. On a scale of 3 to 21, we can see on the graph that for their attention to the story, the median of the posterior distribution for the effect of the video condition was 3.5 points higher, with a 99.99% chance that it was between 2.63 and 4.44. For the engagement, this is the same thing. With the narrative, the median was 1.65 points higher, with a 99.99% chance that it was between 0.99 and 2.42. For the ratings of presence, the median was 1.88 points higher, with a 99.99% chance of being between 1.14 and 2.65. And lastly, for the rated engagement with characters, there was a smaller differences of 0.33 points in favor of the videos as well, like the others, with a 98% chance that was between 0 and 1.03. So in other words, we can definitely say that there was a strong evidence that participants self-reported greater attention, engagement with the narrative, and presence in the story for videos relative to audio stories.
So now we can discuss about the three main factors important in neuromarketing and related directly to our subject. These three factors influencing directly consumers' attention or engagement and help the marketing strategy to be implemented successfully. The first one is the environment engage. Indeed, its goal is to strengthen the message, to be really appropriate to the audience and to the defined products. And also it needs to be well segmented in order to keep the audience's attention. The second one is the marketing stimuli. We've seen in details that they are what they are, so they are the direct actions, and their goal is to trigger purchase behavior and to foster it. The third one is the emotions. So there are the implicit and explicit understandings of the message, and there are the appropriation of the given message. So they are really different depending on each individual, and also depending on their experiences and personal background. So now we'll see the pattern of using engagement as a marketing tool. So first we have awareness and attention, then we have emotional engagement, and then we have the purchase intention. So first, indeed, awareness and attention is the first step. So we need to have a high level of engagement and concern by engaging the brain activity in order to be really successful in it. So for that, we will use marketing stimulus in order to really create this awareness and to create this attention. Then we have the emotional engagement. So it is maybe the most important one. So because we need to create and to develop emotional engagement, which will be really important for the brand, because it will create a certain relationship between the consumers and the products. So between consumers and the brand. Indeed, it will create a deeper and stronger connection. Because emotions are really important for human beings, so it is really important to create this kind of connection if we want a successful marketing strategy. Indeed, so the purpose is to really create a cognitive elaboration and appropriation for the consumers. Last, we'll have so the purchase intention. So the purpose of brands is really to create this purchase intention in consumers. So really to convince them to buy, to persuade them to buy their products by creating this emotional engagement. So this purchase intention is created and is found by these two previous processes, which are awareness and intention and emotional engagement. So the purpose is really to declench the successful purchase intention and behavior in the consumers. To conclude, we will be talking about now the subject of our article, which is narrative engagement, and more specifically the audio narratives and the visual ones. Indeed, we saw that audio narratives were really creating more arousal, more emotional engagement, because they allowed more specifically people to let their own imagination speak, and also they were allowed to appropriate the message better and to really put visuals and put image and put details and put everything personal in what they hear. So indeed, audio narratives were maybe found with better results. Also, they allow the consumers and people to retrieve their own memories and experiences. So it is really more personal narratives. Then we have the visual narratives. So it doesn't mean that they're bad, but they just create less active process because they're really imposing a story. They imposing details. They're just a lack of own perception. So they're good, but they just maybe not that good comparing to audio narratives. Now, if we're talking about narrative engagement in general, they create a really high, a really important application, and they're a really great stimuli for physical activities in general. So the brain is really well stimulated. It creates an increase or decrease of heart rate. They have an impact on blood flow. So they're really creating a high relation between the brand and between the consumers, thanks to narrative tools. So it's really good. And finally, they really have a high cognitive and emotional processing. So it is a really good thing for neuromarketing and for create a successful marketing strategy.